I think some of the challenges for Australia is we're a very small market, only 20 odd million people. But I think Australia is a great place to do business and there is opportunity, but you have to be able to guide your way through that. I'm Tom Parker, I'm the National CEO of the Australia-China Business Council. My connection with China started at a really young age. I'm the youngest of 7 children. One of my older sisters married a Chinese guy. So even as a young boy, I would go to Melbourne's Chinatown and I would have yum cha, siu mai, all those sorts of things, which was quite unusual in the late 70s, early 80s. At that time, I was fortunate enough to go to a school that taught Mandarin. So I was able to do some very basic sentences with my brother-in-law. And they would say, oh, wow, 你的中文非常好, which gave me, I guess, extra encouragement. In terms of the global economy, Japan was Australia's largest trading partner. There was a lot of investment in Australia from Japanese companies and a lot of kids and university students were studying Japanese. So I think I was one of relatively few that were doing Chinese. I went to university and I studied an arts degree at Melbourne University with a major in Chinese. And it wasn't until the end of my first year that I actually got to China. I was studying in Beijing. It was a time, the start of the economic reform in the early 90s. And it was a very interesting time to sort of witness what was happening to China and to be part of that. And I was fortunate enough to go and live and study in Shanghai for a year. And that's when I really got to know China deeply by connecting with my Chinese friends that I made. I played in a band. They were all musicians from the Shanghai Conservatory of Music. We were called Huoguo, hot pot. I was called Young Roll because I was lamb. I was the white guy. I think cultural understanding, whether it's traditional art forms, contemporary art forms, music, gaming, whatever, whether it's Fenjiu, whether it's food, in which to build bridges of understanding. So I guess when I came back from China, I noticed was that China in 2001, it was a really big year. Won the rights for the Olympics, got accession to the WTO and also got into the World Cup. And I think it was sort of China was coming onto the global stage. And so Australian businesses were starting to think, oh, I'd like to engage with China. I could see I could play a role in hoping to be that bridge. All of that was the role that I played was the person who could help explain and understand what's going on in China, or at least break down some of the misconceptions or the concerns or the barriers or the risks. I think some of the challenges for Australia is we're a very small market. You know, there's only 20 odd million people, sort of less than the size of Beijing and Tianjin together. But I think Australia is a great place to do business because we are quite competitive and it is tiny in terms of market size. But if you can be successful here, for a lot of Chinese brands, I think it can be really great launching pad, whether it's to North America or to Europe or to other international markets. And I think sometimes businesses think that if there's demand and I've got the supply, then we can just do the business. Yes, that's true, but you really have to understand the local conditions. How do you adapt your products and services for the local market? We're a highly regulated market, so we have really strong governance, really strong enforcement, a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, a lot of policies that people need to follow. You know, the use of live streaming in China is huge. Wang Hong or influencers or KOLs, again, same sort of thing. Yes, we have Instagram influencers here, but it's a very different approach. It's important to understand how you localize your marketing and your products and services to suit that, but it's also identifying your customers. I first tasted Chinese baijiu, I think on a hard sleeper train. It was ergotol. Fenjiu for me has a flavor that is different. It's lighter. The next day, I don't taste it in my mouth. It gives me a good feeling. So for me, baijiu equals Fenjiu. Fenjiu is well regarded in China. It's one of the top baijiu brands. I think the issue with Fenjiu probably more so is understanding of what is baijiu and the role it plays and has for centuries in China and how important it is to Chinese I guess, culture, to food, and to family life, and to, in some ways, relationship building and business. I think in Australia, if you go to a Korean restaurant, you will have soju. If you go to a Japanese restaurant, you have sake. If you go to a Mexican restaurant, you might have tequila. So why not have a Finjil when you have hot pot? It would be a great way to complement and to understand that. I also think Finjil's great with cocktails. It's got a lighter baijiu flavour that enables you to really add it with great mixes to be a delicious cocktail. I think jiu is a hard word for Australian speakers. I think in China, we've positioned our wine as being very much at an elevated as a luxury. We have brands like Penfolds, Rush for the Wealth, very good name. The ability to have a good name is so important. In my relationships and my dealings with a lot of Chinese brands in Australia, I think that unfortunately they tie marketing to sales, but sometimes you actually have to spend more on marketing in order to build your sales and to build your pipeline, particularly when you're entering a market. And they also need to understand people use shopping platforms as a way of doing market research, whereas in Australia we would spend a lot of money on a website. If you don't have a website, it's like you don't have a business. Websites are crazy in Australia. Chinese people, they'll go and look at the reviews in Taobao. A lot of foreign brands coming into Australia, they might spend all their money on getting access to the jersey or the jumper or on the stadium, but they don't spend the same amount of money telling the story. I think the social license is this idea that for Chinese brands and foreign brands, in any market really, it stands the approval to operate and to run in that country. And by telling the story, you need to activate. For like Finjil, one of the things might be is taking over bars and clubs, having ambassadors, having culinary heroes or leaders or famous Chinese Australians telling the story of Finjil, showing people how to drink. Or it's about showing that here's a different cocktail.
It's Friday night, it's the end of the week. I'm actually going to the MCG to watch my football team. It's one of the blockbuster games. It's also partly reflecting Anzac Day, which is a big celebration in Australia for the service that Australian men and women gave in fighting wars. The Melbourne Football Club lost a lot of players. They were playing football and then they went overseas to fight in the wars and they died. It's a game that was started and invented here in Melbourne, and in fact the Melbourne Football Club invented it. They wrote the rules. It was back in 1857. It's pretty hard to avoid football in the city of Melbourne. So we've got 10 football clubs. Most schools play it. I learned to play it from a young age. It was always on the television. Everyone was talking about it. One of the great things about Australian football is that it's really a family sport. You see families going together. You often see friends who might support different teams sitting next to each other. They're not separated by police or by security guards. For just a regular season game like tonight, probably 70,000 people, which is a lot of people. There's a couple of Chinese sponsors now. When I worked for the Melbourne Football Club a long time ago, I brought in China Southern Airlines, the first Chinese sponsor into the AFL, and they ended up sponsoring not only the Melbourne Football Club but also the Adelaide Football Club. But now we're seeing other brands like TCL, and I think there are some other brands, some car brands maybe. Yeah, there's about 4 or 5 now. AFL is such a great opportunity for Chinese brands to really not only get that social license that enables them to kind of normalise and localise their products. These figures are maybe a bit out of date, but you can start in at maybe a few $100,000, but in order to get your logo here on the jumper, it's going to cost you maybe $1.2 million, and that's per year. And like I was saying before, you can see on the back there they have Primus. That's a very old jumper. That would probably cost you maybe $1 million. If you can have a look here, up here is a bar. A lot of rooms are having functions. So a lot of people, a lot of corporates, a lot of businesses will celebrate, but also use games like tonight to bring their clients, their stakeholders together. Maybe 2 hours before they hear from some of the coaches, some of the past players, they see things on the screen, they have a meal and then they go and watch the game. Before the game is played, a horse will ride around the ground and they have a flame and then all the lights will go down. They have the last post, which is a very solemn bugle call to remember those people who have fallen and died during the wars. The two teams stand side by side, we sing the national anthem and then the game starts.
Here by Cumming, who slaps it forward, and that works for full. Myercheck, lots of talent here. Caleb Windsor, magnificent.
Melbourne's such a great city. It's recognised as the sporting capital of the world for so many reasons. So you can see we've got this amazing MCG over here. We've got the tennis centre over there. The Grand Prix is just around the corner. So we've got so much sport at our fingertips. I think Melbourne doesn't probably have the big attractions, like the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It doesn't have fabulous beaches. It's more about the activities, about the people, about the culture. And And then maybe if we go around there a bit later, you'll see like fast food places. And there's actually a very special story about a Chinese connection. There was a very famous supporter in Chinatown, a restaurant, and they created a siu mai. They adapted it for the local, and they used to sell it from vans or caravans here at the football. It was called the dim sim. Then what happened was they were steamed like the siu mai, but then someone put it into a deep fryer at a fish and chip shop, and then they got spread out all across the different takeaway places and the fish and chip shops in Melbourne, and then all across Australia. For Australian brands, they see these incredible marketing, the size and the scale of opportunity in China. Your product might be only suitable to a small group, but that group still might be 20 million people. And there is opportunity, but you have to be able to know how to guide your way through that and to understand things that are very different. And they go, we don't have millions of dollars. How do we have the cut through? Whilst the budgets can be different, I still think the fundamentals are the same. And then I think going back 10 or so years as well, there was those kind of opportunistic moments with Bobby the Bear, the Lavender Bear, that became really popular, but no one really knew why or how it became popular. You know, Sanitarium Weet-Bix, the Weet-Bix became really popular because they appeared on a TV soap opera in China, but they didn't pay for that advertising. It just happened, and then people looked out for it, and it grew. I think Daigou was an incredible informal export channel. If you take the spirit of Daigou, it's a great opportunity for Australian brands. If there are students or visitors or tourists coming out to Australia, if they get to taste your honey or to taste your wine or to taste your milk, you should be able to do is give them that confidence. Therefore, you should be marketing to the Chinese community in Australia so that they know, oh wow, I can get this back in China as well. The Australia-China Business Council, how we support our members are through four kind of key pillars. One is through knowledge, the other one is through networks, through advocacy, and then through capabilities. So by knowledge, we share information. Networks, we help introduce and bring people together. Advocacy, we advocate on industry and the benefits of trade between Australia and China. And then the last one on capability is how do we help Australian businesses on their pathway to success.